So we believe that the King James Bible, it is the only true and perfect Word of God, because if we don't believe in a perfect Bible, then how do we know what the verse is saying the right thing? And how do we know the doctrine we believe in is right if the verse has a mistake in it? So that's why we demand a perfect Bible to teach the right doctrine. One of the criticisms against the belief of a perfect Bible, which we believe is the King James Version, is that they attack the manuscript evidence of the King James Version. So as you saw in my previous video on the KJV defended on manuscript evidence, the manuscript evidence of the King James Bible is overwhelming compared to modern Bibles. Because as I showed you before, the KJV is approximately 90%, all right, of the thousands of manuscripts. And then the modern Bibles, because a lot of them is based off of Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, and also two more manuscripts. But the major ones are Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, all right? So I'll just put A and B, because they're usually called Aleph and B. They're usually called Aleph and B. So Aleph and B is approximately 1%. So I showed you that before. So because of that, that's why we believe the King James Bible. So James White, Dan Wallace, and other Bible version scholars, they know that because of the KJV advocates, they continually use this argument to weaken the manuscript support of modern Bibles. It makes it sound like the KJV is superior. So then they talk as if the KJV advocates don't know what they're talking about, that they're very amateur. Because what they do is that they attack the KJV by saying that it was started from Erasmus, and Erasmus only did a hurried process of a few manuscripts, and these were late manuscripts. And the KJV translators, that's how a lot of their verses were based off of. But the modern Bibles, on the other hand, why are they superior in manuscripts? Because their argument is that compared to back then, today, we found more. Because as, centuries pass by, you discover more and more manuscripts, right? So then they use this common argument. Oh, we have 5,000 something manuscripts, so that's a lot that the KJV translators didn't have back then. So for them to say that the King James Bible is because it's the majority of manuscripts, well, they got to realize that we found more manuscripts that the KJV didn't have back then. So because of that, our modern Bibles are pretty accurate. You know what makes me very upset at them, and you're just going to have to forgive me for doing this, okay, because I am very mad when they do this. They are lying through their teeth. Blatant liars, and because of that, they deceive people, and they say, oh yeah, we have more manuscripts today than the KJV. This is a blatant lie. Now, it is true, though. If it wasn't true, then they wouldn't win a debate. That's why James White will have to win a debate, because what he does is that he always lies. But that guy, he doesn't lie. It's true. But if you look at the information, look behind what he's saying, then you realize, this guy is actually feeding misinformation. Only a demon-possessed people would talk like this, all right? You know why? You have to be demon-possessed to say this, because you're very dishonest. Let me explain. It is true they found more manuscripts today that the KJV translators did not have. But guess what? The more manuscripts that they discovered, guess what? It supported this. When we say the KJV is 90% of the majority of manuscripts, you know what that means? The manuscripts we keep finding more and more and more and more, it still makes up the majority. They don't tell you that, see? They don't tell you that. So these stinking liars, they're trying to make you think that the KJV is only few manuscripts and it's late, etc. And we found more manuscripts today that the KJV translators did not have. Well, yeah, but guess what? When they discovered more manuscripts, those manuscripts supported the King James Bible. See, these stinking blatant liars, they don't tell you that. In fact, if you study all these manuscripts, it just builds up the evidence more and makes you support this more. So the KJV, it came from what they call the traditional text. Modern Bibles, key primary is Aleph and B, Sinaiticus Vaticanus. KJV is from traditional text. This is a text of manuscripts that the King James Bible came from. And that makes up 90%, see? It's still overwhelming. So Here's a quote from Dr. Floyd Nolan Jones. He's a paleontologist and geophysicist. Quote, "Nevertheless, despite all the variations, nearly all of the words of the New Testament enjoy over 99% attestation." This guy even went stronger than me. He says 99%. From the extant Greek manuscripts, only about 2% have less than 95% support, and fewer than 1% of the words have less than 80%. And most of these differ only slightly. Wow, that's incredible. So that's from his book, Ripped Out of the Bible, page 58. You know what the lowest percentage I've heard is? I never heard anyone give a lower percentage than this. So we're going to give the lowest percentage of the overwhelming manuscript evidence. But this author, he didn't even said it was this low percentage. But I'm going to just assume and make it a low percentage. That's the lowest. I never seen anything lower than that. Here's one from, so this person is Wilbur Pickering. He got his master's in Greek exegesis from Dallas Theological Seminary and his PhD in linguistics from the University of Toronto. He also agreed, quote, "One may reasonably speak of 90% of the extant manuscripts belonging to the majority text type." So he believes right here it's 90%. The remaining 10 to 20% do not represent a single competing form. The minority manuscripts disagree as much or more among themselves as they do with the majority. So the other remaining 10%, but he gives granted 20%, would be the ones that disagree. So 80%, that's the least. That's the least. So you see the manuscript evidence is still overwhelming. So when you hear these scholars, these professional liars, whose Pinocchio nose is about to go off the television screen that you can't see it anymore, these guys, they would lie through their teeth and say, we got more manuscripts than we ever did. And you know, these hypocrites, you know, that James White, when he was on that channel called Wretched, and I guess it is Wretched, but that guy he's a Calvinist and he believes in lordship salvation. He believes in lordship salvation. If he really believes that, how can he, as an honestly saved person, has the fruit of the Holy Spirit to lie through his teeth about the Bible? How dare he say that? I wonder if he's saved. See? So here's a point right here. The reason why I am very mad is because I'm not acting like a jerk, because they're acting like jerks. How dare they lie through their teeth like this? The KJV, I mean, it's very evident. The KJV is still the majority of evidence of manuscripts. Oh, the quote by Wilbur Pickering, it can be found in his book, The Identity of the New Testament Text, pages 114, and you can also look through all the way to 120. Here's another one. This one is incredible. I'm going to show you the overwhelming textual evidences. I'm going to give ancient ones. So they'll say, okay, there's a lot, but it's not ancient. No, that's another lie. There are ancient texts, ancient manuscripts that support it. These can vary up to 2nd century. So I showed you in one of the former videos about manuscript evidence, and I listed some, but I'm going to give now exact details now, okay? I'm going to give exact details to show it, to really prove it. This is found in the article Every Reading in Nestle Allen 26th edition, where the traditional text opposes Vaticanus. It's in the book Early Manuscript Church Fathers and the Authorized Version, page 45. So this gentleman actually went through all the manuscripts. There are 5 uncials. These are famous and oldest manuscripts. The 5 uncials, which are pretty famous and one of the oldest of the manuscripts that all manuscript scholars recognize, he's going to list these 5 uncials. The impression is often given that these 5, actually 6, oldest and most famous uncials give conclusive support to the text of the modern versions. Nothing could be further from the truth. B strongly supports it, but the support of Aleph is hardly overwhelming. From 2 to 1 in the Gospels, and Acts to about 10 to 7 in Romans to Judge, with its correctors supporting the traditional text by 5 to 2. And then A, C, and the 2D manuscripts give overall majority support to the AV side. Look at that. So, going through all the New Testament books of the Bible, of these 5 uncials that he listed, it's about 2 to 1 in the Gospels, And it's about Gospel and Acts, so it's going to be Acts as well. It's going to be 10-7 in Romans to Judges. So obviously the greater number is the AV side. The lesser numbers are either Aleph and B. 10-7 is going to be Romans to Judges. Or Jude, my bad. With its correctors supporting the traditional text, and then the correctors will go by 5-2. And then AC and the 2D manuscripts give overall majority support to the AV side. So he lists a whole table. So I'm just giving you some parts of it, not the full version, to make it simplified enough for you. But this is the 5 unseals that he listed over here. He mentioned AC, the 2D manuscripts, etc. So you notice right here that even in this case, the AV side still wins. But not only that, I didn't even go through these. The Old Latin. You remember the Old Latin? Old Latin is one of the ancient manuscripts that KJV advocates brag about. It can go 2nd century. You got to realize that Sinaiticus Vaticanus, they go 4th century. See? 4th century. The reason why they go by this is because this is the most ancient. However, they ignore all these other evidences right here. And they actually didn't do a thorough job like they should. So over here, the Old Latin, it has 2,340 for traditional text to 1,252 for Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. And then its pre-AD 600 Old Latin total is 981 to 482. That's page 71. Here's another one, the Peshitta. Peshitta goes for 2nd century as well. So you'll notice right here the odds and the numbers again. Totals of 2nd century Peshitta is 237 for KJV to 74 for NIV. So NIV, it is the chief Bible that copies Aleph and B. It's the chief of it. So because of that, it is the representative of modern Bibles for A and B. So you'll notice right here that it's still king. The manuscript evidence behind modern Bibles is still very, very weak, whereas the manuscript evidence of the KJV traditional text is still very, very strong. Here's another one. Prestigious United Bible Society of Nessel Allen Text. So these are the critics of the KJV, the headquarters of it, where all modern Bible scholars come from. These are the guys who hold the manuscript. Even they themselves, this is interesting. They have the totals of the 2nd century to the late church fathers. So you got church fathers too. And this is from United Bible Society, all right? The critics of the KJV, the ones who actually hold the manuscripts. And the ones who some of its dishonest scholars say, oh, we have more manuscripts before, so the KJV translators did not have that. So we'll notice right here that they have right here 968 for traditional text of KJV, to 733 for Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. So this is for UBS, for church fathers. Church fathers, they go as early as 2nd century to later. Look at that. So Berg and Miller, they're another scholarly group, but these guys are sympathetic to the traditional text side. So Berg and Miller, they are more thorough. They go through more thoroughly. And they explain this. They explain, has totals of 2nd century to late church fathers having 2,627 for traditional text of KJV to 1,745 for Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. And that's found on pages 86 and page 117 of the book Early Manuscripts, Church Fathers, and the Authorized Version. I also forgot to mention page 71. So you'll notice right here that in cases where they actually dug up the manuscripts and looked through all the verses, you notice right here that the KJV is definitely majority of manuscripts and has ancient witnesses, majority of the ancient witnesses too. So you'll notice right here KJV still stands strong and supreme. So when you hear Judas White lying through his teeth, we got more manuscripts before than the KJV translators ever had, he didn't go through every single little detail and tell you. He was just hiding it through rhetoric and wit and fancy lawyer talk so that he can fool the people. And if you're one of those YouTubers who fall for that kind of stuff, no wonder you get deceived, because you don't actually study every detail. You should do some research and study every detail. I would urge you to do that.